Yo, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Until There's a Cure's Empowering Voices series. My name is Drew, and today I'm joined with special guest Donna Allen. How's it going, Donna?
Oh, just great.
Nice. That's great to hear. Okay, so I want to start with what it was like growing up. So, like, what kinds of things were you into? Yeah, just kind of if you could talk more about that.
Okay, well, first of all, I was born and raised in a suburban community outside of St. Louis, Missouri. So I'm Midwesterner, and went to the public schools there and was active in all kinds of girls' sports at the time. I was really enjoyed that, played softball and most of the varsity sports when I got into high school. So that took a lot of my time. I was also a cheerleader, and I was active in a lot of just activities in addition to the academics. So that eventually led me to graduate with an undergrad degree from the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. I have a degree in education, and I was going to teach math in high school. But then my last semester of college, I took a computer programming course. And this was way back in the early days, punch cards and that sort of thing. But it got me interested in the field. And so I basically immediately changed. And the rest of my life basically had been spent in computer programming of one sort or another.
Nice. So you mentioned that you play a lot of sports. So what is your favorite sports team?
Team now?
Yeah, now.
Okay. Well, I'm a great Giants fan because I like baseball, and because the San Francisco Giants have in fact been very good to Until There's a Cure Foundation, and we have a wonderful partnership with them. And I also like the San Francisco 49ers. So I've become a California girl with my sports loyalties.
Nice. So you mentioned that you went to Missouri for college. So what is your favorite experience from being at Missouri?
Oh gosh, I can think of a lot of experiences, some of them not so favorite. For example, we back in those days, girls could not wear slacks even unless the temperature was below 20 degrees. So there was a sort of a dress code. So that was kind of a funny thing to remember. But I think the best thing is I made some really good friends, and started, like I said, a career in computer work.
Nice. I'm definitely looking into computer work in my future. So
good.
And then straight out of college, you moved into the insurance field, if I'm correct.
Right. I had a couple different programming jobs, and one of them was in Southern California, and then I worked for the University of California at Irvine for a while. And the person who was my manager at the time left there and came to San Francisco, and it sounded like an adventure to me. I hadn't been to San Francisco, so he offered several of my co-workers jobs with his new company, and it happened to be an insurance company based in San Francisco. So that's how I got into the insurance business, and worked my way through several positions there, and ended up as a programming manager before I left that career.
You mentioned that you left. That must have been a hard thing to leave because you had such a good job going for you. So why did you decide to leave your position as program manager?
Well, there were several changes going on at the company. It was actually owned by a holding company on the East Coast, and so there were many changes going on, and I decided that I wanted to look at something else in my future. And so I actually left there and ended up applying to business school, and I ended up going back to Stanford and got my MBA at Stanford Graduate School of Business. So the intention was to start on a new career.
Yeah.
But I eventually, after completing my MBA, I ended up going back into the insurance business, but at a different level. And I became an administrative officer for a small insurance company. Started out with 5 people and grew to 120 or so. So it was a really good, it was a good experience because it took advantage of my past, but it also gave me experience with a startup in an unusual way. So that was, yeah, that was my experience after business school.
Nice. And then when you retired from that job, what things did you pursue afterwards?
What came next?
Yeah.
Well, again, there was a change in ownership and direction for the company. And so this was after several years. And so I decided to see what I wanted to do next. And about the time that I left that position, I was in the fortunate position of being able to do volunteer work. And my first experience was with Until There's a Cure. My background there is that I was in my home, which is in Woodside, California, and I was reading a local paper. And there was an article, the photograph on the front page was one of the founders of Until There's a Cure. And the article was about how they were working to gain the publicity that would, of several organizations in the Bay Area, including the San Francisco Giants. And they were looking for volunteers. My backstory is that my older brother died of complications from AIDS. And so it was always in the back of my mind to see if I could do something along those lines. So I contacted the people named in this article and said, I might be interested in volunteering for your organization. And the response I got was, how soon can you be here? So sure enough, I got myself down to the office, which was then in Menlo Park, and started volunteering. The initial job, you'll probably enjoy this. We had essentially no automation. We had a copier, but that was about it. We were preparing materials for the first San Francisco Giants Until There's a Cure Day. And they were the first team to ever recognize AIDS publicly. The first professional athletic team to recognize AIDS publicly. And so it was a really big deal. There was going to be national coverage and so on. Mm-hmm. So the way we prepared publicity packets for these people who were going to come to the game was opening up a big warehouse and collating ourselves by just taking pieces of paper and putting them around the outside of this whole in the inside of the warehouse in order to create this packet of materials for every one of the sportscasters and news people that were going to be there. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of getting in quickly and getting into the first game. So that was rewarding to me.
Mm-hmm. And you started volunteering with Until There's a Cure in 1994.
That's right.
So when did you take the steps to get to being part of the board?
At first, my first 2 or 3 years, it was literally just doing whatever was needed to be done, whether it was packaging bracelets or answering phone calls, that kind of thing. But I had the business background, and so I felt like I could make more of a contribution. So the first executive director way back then, I sort of became her assistant, and then ended up attending board meetings, and I think the organization the board was convinced that I was definitely interested in and it was a long-term commitment. Mm-hmm. And so I think in about 1996 or 7, I became a member of the board, and stayed on the board from that time forward with others, including Kathleen Scutchfield, who was a co-founder of Until There's a Cure.
Mm-hmm. So what have been your favorite experiences volunteering for Until There's a Cure?
Well, one of my favorites is that Kathleen Scutchfield and I interviewed Nora Hannah is now the executive director. And I'm not sure if she talked us into it or we talked her into it, but I say that we talked her into becoming the executive director for Until There's a Cure. And it's a decision that we've been extremely happy with ever since.
Mhm.
I mean, it's been quite an experience, with both challenging and rewarding at times, and frustrating at times, because we continue to fight the apathy around AIDS.
Mhm.
And now we understand it because of COVID. There's a lot more attention to COVID, but there's also many similarities that we try to explain to people, and to try to, get the subject of AIDS in front of people's face as well.
Definitely. And then Nora also mentioned to me that you have pitched or throughout the first pitch at the Giants game,
Right.
and been a ball girl. So what were that like?
Oh, that was really fun. Several years ago, one of the Until There's a Cure game days, the combination of the Giants and Until There's a Cure asked me if I wanted to throw out the first pitch. And I was very honored to do that. It was a lot of fun. And I almost made it. I stood a little bit in front of the mound, but I did throw the ball all the way to the catcher. So it's the old softball coming back, I guess. But it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
And being out in the middle of the stadium was just great. Being out on the field. Then following that, a year or so later, we had been working with the San Francisco Giants Community Fund, their philanthropic, wing, we work with them to do the Until There's a Cure Day. And the chair of their board asked if I would be interested in being what do they call them now? I can't remember. The ball girl, essentially. And that was something too, because you dress in a uniform.
Mhm.
And they're the player's uniform. I mean, they're similar to the player's uniform.
Yeah.
So it was a little difficult for me because I'm not very big. And so finding a uniform that I didn't quite swim in was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But, we had to wear the batters' helmets and everything to be protected because we were right there on the field.
Mhm.
So
So how many times have you actually thrown out the first pitch at the Giants game?
I've done it twice. The second time was when the Giants offered that to Nora to Kathleen Scutchfield, and her daughter Sarah, who's on the board, and myself. So all three of us were on the field at the same time, with three different catchers, of course. And so, that was my second opportunity.
Nice. And then what other philanthropies are you a part of?
I belong to another one that my graduate school class started. It's called Project Redwood. And we decided at our 25th reunion that we sort of wanted to give back, because all of us were in, reasonable positions at that time, and through a good part of our career. And so one of my classmates stood up at an assembly we had and said, why don't we do something together? We can do much more together than we can individually. And so we formed this organization. We call it a partnership, and we collect money from our classmates.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a whole grant review process where people who want to show us what they're doing, specifically focused on poverty around the world. And it's a big, we didn't tackle much poverty around the world, but what we do is we accept applications from our classmates who know organizations that are around the world.
Yeah.
And then we evaluate them and award grants. So
Mm-hmm.
that's also been very rewarding.
Yeah, definitely. What kinds of places have you donated the money to so far?
It's a girls' high school in rural Kenya. There's a training in some of the refugee camps in Africa. There's a network of high schools in the US, including one in San Francisco, that basically take young people that are in underprivileged areas and bring them in and support part of their tuition, which we did, and give them a college prep education that they otherwise wouldn't have a chance to do. So a lot of education, a lot of job training, and job creation for especially young people.
Yeah, you mentioned international places like Kenya. So have you gotten the chance to travel to any of these places?
I've been to, my husband and I went on a vacation to Africa, which was one of the most thrilling things I've ever done. At the time, we tried to actually meet up with a couple of our grantees, and we weren't able to. But one of the things that came out of that was that we met some people who were creating crafts that, in fact, I brought back and introduced to Nora, and we're now selling some of the products that came from Zambia. The little pocket elephants, you know those? Yeah, those are made in Zambia as a place where we met the women who were making them. And I've also been to a place in Nicaragua, which was training for improving farming techniques and teaching women how to create small businesses, small bakeries and things like that.
Nice. And then you mentioned how there's been some products that you took from these places and put it on the Until There's a Cure website. So what is your favorite item that's on the website right now? Like, what is it that you really love?
Well, I love, I wear my bracelet all the time. So that's my absolute favorite. I also like one of the first Africans we have, which are the ones made out of PVC pipe, the carved African art bracelet. I really like those, and part of it's because it was one of the first African ones we did. But I also like a lot of the fabric products that are now coming out of mostly South Africa, I believe. You know, the bags and scarves and things of that kind.
You mentioned the carved bracelets. I think this is what you mean.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. You can find this on the Until There's a Cure website for any of you guys who are interested.
Right.
And I like to end off this interview with a lighthearted question. So if you could be any animal in the world, what animal would you be?
Oh gosh, what a question. Maybe a giraffe. And only because they're so tall. That would be different for me.
Definitely. Giraffes are super cool animals.
They are.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview. And thank you to you guys who are listening at home. And I'll see you in the next one.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.